Today we're going to talk about PACE plans and how to develop one for yourself, your family, your community group for day-to-day life, as well as when the old S hits the TF. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below about things that have worked out well for you, things that have not worked out for you, as we all continue to master our craft and develop our tactical virtues. So if you're unfamiliar with the phrase PACE, it's a military term that relates specifically to communications, although it should apply more broadly than that. And so that's PACE, that's primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So that's 4 ways of getting a message across from us to a distant end. Now, recently I had a conversation with a good pal of mine here. He's like, Stokeman, just tell me what tool to use for the job. My dad, told me, people who raised me told me to get the best tool that you can afford. And I said, well, it depends on what job it is that you're trying to get after. Every form and mode of communications has different jobs and skill sets that it brings to the table. And there is no one thing is going to do everything. And so we'll kind of break into these down a little bit more. So probably at the top of the list of our PACE plans is the old cell phone. Everybody has one. We use them to talk. We use them to text. We use them to send messages. We use different applications that we'll put on our phone, whether it's things like Signal or Telegram. We'll try to be high speed, low drag, and use VPNs. But no matter what we're doing, it's all kind of using the same mode of transport, right? So using talk, text, message, Signal, Telegram, that's not 5 different things in your PACE plan. That's 1, because you're using all of the same mode. Still some decent TTPs in there, but if we're being real about things, a cell phone is 1 tool in your PACE plan. Again, it's good because it has nationwide service. Everybody has one, which is both good and bad at the end of the day. But that's neither here nor there. If we're honest with ourselves, that's our primary tool. You could say, well, I'm going to use a computer to send emails and do different things, all the same things I'm doing on my phone. And it's a computer, not a phone, so it's 2 different things. That's wrong. Ultimately, it's using all of the same infrastructure. It's a combination of fiber, cabling, other cabling that's out there, towers, and satellites, and that's how everything's getting beamed across into the big wide world. Once you want to try to get away from that, now I want to think about who is it that I'm trying to communicate with. If I'm trying to talk to friends and family locally, then the thing to do is probably to invest in some Walkie Talkies. This particular one is a Talk Pod. There are many different types and manufacturers out there. They all do the same thing. They use radio frequencies, so it's a different mode of transportation, and they all, particularly these type, are going to use a UHF and VHF, as well as you have the opportunities to get some that are GMRS specific or FRS specific or MERS specific, but they're all using everything in that UHF to VHF bandwidth, if that makes sense. The good thing about these is that not everybody can listen to them, right? My buddies over in California, they can't hear what I'm saying. Guys down in Hotlanta, they can't hear what we're talking about up here. No matter how hard they try, they're not going to be able to hear what I say on these radios. The downside is that it's just that. I can't talk and reach out beyond line of sight. Typically, with a rubber duck, maybe 1 to 2 miles, use something that's a little bit more robust of an antenna. Now might be able to extend that out to 10 miles. I get some elevation on me. I might be able to extend that out to 15, 20 miles. But just bear that in mind, right? It's not it's not magic. It is magic, in how they work, but they're not going to do every job that you want to do. If you want to maintain communications with your family and you are never beyond a 10-mile radius, this is a great tool to have in your kit bag, whether you have some in the kitchen, some in the vehicle, some out in the shop, some up in the woods, like what we do here. Great tools and great resources, and relatively easy to use. If you invested 30 minutes to an hour, you're going to understand how to program everything on the radio that you are choosing to use. And you can outfit a family of 4 for less than $200. It'd be all of the radios, all of the cabling, all of the better antennas, all of it for less than $200. And it's a one-time fee, except for replacing batteries and things of this nature. So relatively cheap to get into and easy to operate and maintain. You're limited, for the most part, to voice transmissions. You're not going to get a lot of data stuff out of this. It's not encrypted, so anybody with one can hear what you're saying if they're within range. But, pros and cons. We recently looked at these Walkie Talkies, the rapid radios, and although they use the same mode of transport as a phone, I'm going to put these in a little different box, if you will, because they are encrypted and there is no GPS quality in the radios. So I can talk nationwide, or I can have voice transmissions nationwide, but everybody has to have one. And even if you go buy a rapid radio, you're not going to be able to hear what I'm saying on it, again, because it's encrypted. And if I want to continue the mindset of getting beyond the line of sight, but I want to use radio frequencies, I don't want to use the LTE, I don't want to use anything that's way up there, I probably need to think about SATCOM, which is way up there, but thinking of getting outside of the local area, using SATCOM or using something like a ham radio. This one is a 705. It's not the best baseband or base station radio, but it is good to be able to pack up and get on and go up into the woods and do some what's called QRP, and that's just short range communications here at the end of the day, because the wattage is so low. But with these radios, I can dial in to all kinds of frequencies that enable me not only to talk to guys with these radios, but also to talk to folks who are beyond the line of sight. So if I wanted to talk to Jared, we can use these radios to get in touch with him. If I want to talk to guys in California or Germany or South America or Africa, I can hear what they're saying and I can talk to them once we get everything kind of meshed up. I will say that the learning curve for HF radios is a little bit higher. And if you're trying to be G to G, keep all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, you need to make sure that you get your license. And I'll say that not to down talk the licensing. Like, it's a great learning experience, not only with the information that you're going to learn getting your license, but also with the people that you're going to meet along the way who really want nothing to do other than help dudes get into using radios. So the other interesting thing about radios is you have all kinds of modes that you can operate off of, as well as digital. Now I can send email traffic, I can send hard data, either just through some different applications. Maybe you do have it connected to your phone or a tablet. That opens up a whole new world of being able to communicate with other people. As well as listening to AM and airband stations, things of this nature. So it's kind of a cool kit bag. There's other things out there, some of which I don't have, that we're looking to get into, like Meshtastic. It looks like a great resource to be able to use, and because it is mesh. So it's similar. What's a mesh? Right? It's not just a repeater. It's a mesh in how it works. So as long as there's somebody in your mesh between you and your distant end, you can get in touch with everybody. So that's kind of cool and fairly cheap to get into at the end of the day, part for part, pound for pound. Outside of these, we can't dismiss analog communications, right? So writing letters, using community boards, having physical locations and link up sites, and having designated times that we may get together to do things. Don't downplay that at all, because those are extremely hard to crack. Back in the day, we would use hardwired radios, field radio system, which are also, very secure. The only way to break into that is to actually tap into a line. So as long as you're physically inspecting your line and you know that it's good, you know that you're being secure and that you're G to G. Same thing with using analog means of communication, whether it's again using a community board or another physical location to pass messages. Getting to each other face to face should be a part of your PACE plan. Like everybody's PACE plan in the military, the last of that E is a runner. Like I'm gonna send a runner to go from me and pass a message on to somebody else. So don't discount that. There's a lot of power to that. So how can I utilize a PACE plan for communications for the day-to-day? Like odds are you're not going to go outside of using your phone, but what I'm going to challenge and encourage you to do is, as you're thinking about building a communications infrastructure for your community group, is that you need to get outside of this and start using other things. Of course, the cheapest one to get into when I'm thinking about local community groups, so family and friends, would be, again, to use something like a UHF or VHF radio. And get on it and start using the thing. Like, figure it all out. Get your family to figure it all out. Once you have that, and now you have two solids, think about how I'm going to utilize some of those analog message boards and other means of communication. Again, maybe it's a weekly get-together that you have, that you get some sit-reps from folks and check in on each other and chew the fat and break some bread. Like, those are very meaningful, right? Now think about how I can expand that as well. And then once you start to dip your toes into different radio systems, you're probably going to end up using some HF systems as well, because these are really good because they enable you to reach out and to receive from far away different messages. So now you don't just have communications with your local group, now you have communications with folks outside of your area as well. So when things start to go black, when they go dark, and you lose the ability to talk on a radio, or talk on a cell phone, now these two things are gone, right? Now I need to figure out how to use these and how to use these, right? Does that make sense? And if you wait until then, it's too late. You have to start exercising and doing the things now. Consider as you're using these different modes of transportation, the risks to your security, to your operational security that you are taking in by using them, right? I would never, I don't send messages that couldn't be heard by anybody and their mother, but if I did, I would not want to use a cell phone, even with a VPN, right? That would be dumb. No matter if you're using Signal, Telegram, like all of the interwebs of these phones and how they are connected to everything else that you use is kind of scary. So consider that. Like maybe you do just have a burner phone for things, but now you start talking additional costs. And if you're not using the tools and those resources, you're never going to be able to justify the cost that you have invested in the tools. So make sure that you get a tool, but make sure that you start using those tools to the fullest extent possible. Go through some different plans and rehearsals and seeing what your range is. Just like I was telling my buddy, he's using my mobile GMRS rig, and he's able to talk to some folks that are close to him, and he's like, man, this is awesome. I can talk to my wife when I'm up in the shop. We can talk to our friends who live close to us. I was like, man, that's great. Now plug in that same antenna that you got into that handheld radio and see if you can still do the same thing, because now you're going to determine how much you need to invest in your own equipment. And these are not things that you just buy and say, oh crap, now I just wasted a ton of money. I guess I'm just not going to do that again. If you get those tools, make sure that you use them. Now the downside to HF radios is not everybody's going to be able to afford them. And not everybody in your family, your community group is going to be able to afford them. But maybe in that community group, you have 2 or 3 dudes who want to get into using ham radios, and they are your connection point with outside, as well as maybe utilizing maybe like the 80 or 40 meter band to talk to one another a little bit more closer, and then double that up with your other radio systems. Maybe you are using handheld radios and you know that you can talk on UHF and VHF, right? So maybe all of your transmissions that you are sending, you utilize 2 frequencies, right? If all I do is receive on VHF, but I transmit on UHF, that means that my distant end is going to be flip-flopped. They're going to be receiving on VHF and sending on UHF. Does that make sense? So now if somebody only had half of the equation, all they could do is get half of the conversation, because you'd have to scan. While you can scan with these phones, it's not like having a badass scope on a HF radio. I could find somebody talking on these a lot easier, but only if I know that somebody is talking. Only if I know when they are talking. And although I could pick up one with this 705, right? You can see that coming in there. That's on 145. If somebody was talking back on UHF spectrum, I can't see that at all here. All I'm tied into is that VHF. So only for dudes who had a lot of meters, a lot of radios going on, are they going to be able to see that there's things happening on both. But there's stuff happening out there all the time. So it's a matter of plugging them down. So how do I communicate with other people? I could send voice transmissions. Maybe I want to get into data, but that's probably not going to be relative for my local community group, using data over HF. How can I send transmissions through these systems and have them be somewhat secure, so I can keep things brief? I can use encoded words and phrases. If I'm using the email, obviously I can use all kinds of encoding that I want to. And notice I'm saying encoding, not encryption. This is encryption, right? It's AES 256 encrypted. If I come up with a one-time pad that my folks have, is that encryption? Probably not by the letter of the law, but I'm not a lawyer, so void where prohibited by law. But if I had a nice one-time pad that we could all use to transmit when things were needed to initiate movement, you can do that really well and really easy to send and to receive transmissions. So I'm using short transmission bursts. You're not getting on your radio, pulling this thing down forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and talking story, which you will hear ham radio guys do, and they will just sit there and hold this down forever. Because what that does is it's sending out something that somebody can receive with their scope, right? So by holding this down, again, I'm sending out this beam transmission for me, and it's going, in every single direction. And if somebody is monitoring, you're going to see that there's a transmission happening, so they can dial into it. So keeping things short, having times for planned communication. If you're using HF stuff or radio RF stuff, but you just want to have more than one mode. At the end of the day, pace plan. Have more than one way of communicating with your family and your community group, and then actually use those plans. You may not have 4. Maybe all you have is your cell phone. And then after that, it's a physical link up. Well, work through your physical link ups. Get out there and use all the stuff. Use it often. Make sure that it's not something that you're gonna have some skill atrophy on. Again, team, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below. As always, until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
We know you're out there! Come to my voice!
Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.